So I went to TIFF for the first time ever. I've been to other festivals, however, Sundance, South by Southwest, Fantastic Fest, etc. But TIFF was the first time I ever went to Canada even. So I was very excited to go and see what it was all about. This year they had a ton of great premieres from Queer, The Substance, as well as Anora, and I was ready. I was ready for it all, and then TIFF happened. So here are all the films I watched at TIFF and my experience and all of that. A little tidbits here and there. We're starting some new things on the channel. October's just around the corner, spooky season, things like that. I want to start giving you some different content, so stay tuned for that. But this is in no particular order. Well, maybe a particular order. I don't always like to say these are the worst films I watched and these are the best films, but these are just the films that intrigued me the most. So let's start off with one of the ones that I was very excited to watch, and this just shot up straight to number 1 on my list as soon as I was done with it, and that is Luca Guadagnino's Queer, which stars Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey. And oh man, this is one of those movies that I'm telling you, once you get the chance to watch it, your life is forever changed. I am so serious with that, because there is just a way that Luca Guadagnino is directing here that is so fresh, it is so new. Daniel Craig's performance, Drew Starkey, all of that. And this was one of the last films I watched. I think this was actually the last film I watched at the whole festival, and then I had to fly out early the next morning. This was late at night and it started a little later, and Luca was there and he was talking and all of that. So it's definitely a very hectic night and all of that, and Drew Starkey was in attendance. Daniel Craig, sadly not in attendance, but was dearly missed. But this is one of those movies, when you get the chance to watch it, watch it. I don't even want to talk much about it or spoil things for you. The imagery, the performances, the subtlety, the music, the needle drops, that's all I'll say. Next film is going to be Anora, which of course, everything you've heard of Anora is true and then some. I'm telling you, people are not hyping up this movie enough for me. After watching it, I was very surprised just how quiet things were for it. I know it's all over social media and stuff, but this film needs more. I don't even know how to describe how much more it needs, but this one truly hits. Sean Baker, Mikey Madison are an amazing duo, and I would love to see them work together more in the future. Not necessarily right now. I think they need some time apart and then come back and work together, because I think there's some magic between the two. Like, they get each other, that's what I'll say. This movie was one of those movies that I knew was a movie I had to go out and wait for, like with some good time, because I had heard earlier the day prior that The Brutalist, which was a P&I showing for Preston and Industry, it was swamped and packed like 2 hours even before the film started. So I knew that there was a lot of hype behind Anora, especially coming out of Cannes and winning the Palme d'Or. I knew that Anora had a lot of hype, and I was right. I went there like at 7:15ish. The movie started at 9:30ish, and scoped out the line a little bit, and it was pretty like hefty already, I would say. Decided to go get some breakfast, and then came back like about like 30-40 minutes ish, so like almost close to 8. Line was crazy already, so I knew I just had to wait in line already, and it was well worth the wait. This is a movie you want to see in the packed theater, because there is so much going on at the same time, and it's going to move you to tears, it's going to have you laughing, it's going to have you in awe, it's going to have you bumping, because the soundtrack is just so great. Needle drops again, a lot of needle drops this year, but I really love this film. Believe the hype. The next film I really enjoyed at TIFF, which is already out, is The Substance, and I watched this as well at a P&I, and this was one of those movies that you watch it in the theater, it's a whole other experience than watching it at home, I feel. Whereas I feel that this movie has so much for a theater and an audience to really get a full experience. I think it can kind of take away from the experience as well, having a full theater, because there are many moments in this when I watched it with the packed audience where people were just laughing a little bit too hard, like, alright y'all, there's no camera in front of you, you're not filming a reaction video, you don't have to go that hard. And sometimes you couldn't understand what they were saying in the film, or it was being drowned out by how much hectic the theater was. But still, I really enjoyed The Substance at TIFF. It was definitely one of those movies that I would say is best watched in the theater. Coralie Farja really has such an eye, and I love the way she uses colors and close-ups and things like that. So I'm very excited to see what Coralie will do next. But Demi Moore, as well as Margaret Qualley, especially Demi Moore, has such an amazing presence in the film. And I mean, it's already out, so you can watch it, or if you've already watched it, let me know what you think. I do have 2 videos on it already. The next film was one that I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to feel. I was definitely excited for it, but I didn't know if it was going to really be a film that I was going to enjoy, and that was Emilia Perez, which is coming out on Netflix, I believe, next month. I'm very curious too when it comes to award season, because they can't do that in award season, right? You can't give the award to all of the actresses involved here. But Emilia Perez is this musical epic of sorts, and you follow these two characters as their lives sort of get wrapped up with one another as time progresses and it gets more complicated. I don't want to give too much away because I think it's a film to best explore not knowing much. I didn't know much about the film either when it first came out or when I went to watch it at TIFF, and I came out really loving this. I think Zoe Saldana is having her best role to date in this movie, and I'm very curious to see how people react to it as well once it's released. I need the soundtrack and I need to rewatch all of the musical bits of it because they are so grand and amazing. But definitely Emilia Perez was such a standout at TIFF. A film that I had no clue I was going to watch until the day before I flew out to TIFF, and that is The Apprentice, which is the Donald Trump biopic of sorts from Ali Abbasi, starring Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump, Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn, have Maria Bakalova as Ivana Trump. I just know I really enjoyed Ali Abbasi's previous film, Holy Spider, and I've also watched their other film, Border, so I was definitely excited to see what they were going to bring for this one, and let me tell you, this movie was something else. So we were pretty much not booked to see this movie at all, but we ended up talking to the distributor and stuff like that, and ultimately got a chance to watch it at one of the few screenings they had at TIFF. And I sat down with it, not knowing what to expect. Immediately the movie threw me for a loop, and then it kept throwing me for more loops, and by the end I was just like, what the hell did I just watch? And then I kept thinking about it more, and I was just like so fascinated about what Ali Abbasi as well as Sebastian Stan, Jeremy Strong, Maria Bakalova were able to do in those less than 2 hours that the film was. And it's a film I'm still thinking about it. I'm still trying to figure out my review for it, but it definitely was one of those films that I'm happy I got to watch. The next film is going to be actually the first film I watched at TIFF, and that is The Seed of the Sacred Fig. This is a movie that has gotten so much controversy around it, and I don't want to give too much away about it. I think it's an important film and definitely one of those movies you just have to watch to truly believe. It is sort of a film that is told in such a distinct way, mixing two different mediums of sorts, because at times it can feel like a documentary, and other times it's telling this other linear story as well. Definitely not going to go too deep into it because I think it's one of those movies that you just watch and you just experience. But it is truly such an important film, and I'm very excited to see more people talk about it pretty soon. Next film is going to be Heretic that I watched, and this one was one of the movies that I was very, very excited for. I really was excited to see Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, and this was from the writers of A Quiet Place as well. And I will tell you, this is a movie that I caught very late in the night, and it was also after watching a ton of movies. So I don't know, I maybe was not in the best state to watch this movie because it is pretty wordy, I will say, and it does sort of require to pull full attention into the film at times. And I really did love, though, however, some of the imagery that unfolded here, especially in some of the reveals that came about. It was one of those films that just leaves you guessing what's going to happen next, and then it gives you another magic trick of sorts, I'll call it that. And I really do love the performances here. I think Sophie Thatcher, Hugh Grant, and Chloe East are amazing in it. It's just the script was a little bit too wordy for me at times, considering that I watched it late. It's actually one of the secret screenings of Fantastic Fest, but I didn't get to watch it then, which I really would have loved to watch it at Fantastic Fest because I was a little bit more recharged at that point, I will say. But I still did enjoy this movie a lot for its way that it presents ideas as well as the acting from the actors all involved here. You have to really commit yourself to these roles when it's just three people in a room for the duration of a movie at times and there's nothing else going on. So 100% commitment is required, and I think all of them excelled at this. It is such a great film, honestly. It's just the script at times, it just bothered me. But more on that in my review that will come out later on. Surprise, surprise of the festival has to be The Life of Chuck, which I got to watch. This is actually not coming out till next year now. It just got picked up by Neon, and I'm very curious about that decision from Neon, but more on that on on my review once we get closer to it, or I'll probably just release the review already. But The Life of Chuck is based on a Stephen King novella, and it is very much so more like The Green Mile and Stand By Me than it is actually like all of King's horror films. And I really did love this movie a lot. It was very much so one of those movies that moved me to tears by the end of it. It was so well done. Everybody involved here is just great. And it is one of those movies that I say, don't get it spoiled. Just go into it not knowing much. I'll try my best not to spoil anything as well, because I think it's one of those movies that is just so well crafted. It just has to be experienced without knowing anything. The Assessment is this sci-fi film that is sort of told in a distant near future of sorts, and you basically have a couple who wants to have a child, but now the only way you can have a child in this new society is to go through the government, and they send this assessor to give you an assessment to see if you will be good parents or not. This stars Elizabeth Olsen. You also have Alicia Vikander, and Alicia Vikander plays such a unique and interesting role like you've never seen her before, or any performance from anybody at all this year, and it is just such an interesting film. It is such a unique and lush and vibrant world that has been crafted here from the filmmaker, and I gotta give her kudos for that, because there is so much I was so intrigued by, and there are so many aspects of this movie that I truly ended up loving. But one of the things that I really think about this movie that I just couldn't put it higher in my list was that I think that this worked better as a TV show, because there's so many things that are being explored and opened up, and then they're just left there, and that just kind of left me a little bit like, well, there goes that. But other than that, it is still a great film. Like I'm telling you, as I said in the beginning, all of these films I would recommend. They're all great. None of them are bad or anything like that. It's a list, and I gotta go like which ones are my favorite and which ones were not my favorite. But I still enjoyed all of them. The next film is going to be Night Bitch, the new Amy Adams film based on a book of the same name. This is a movie that I think that many people were sort of a little bit conflicted with the trailer. They were wondering if this movie really was what they were thinking or not. And I will tell you, I saw the trailer and I was like, I don't know, this is not what I was expecting. Then I saw the movie and I was like, that trailer did not do any justice to what I just saw. This movie is completely different from the trailer. Trust me on that. It is very much so a dark comedy, and it does have some fantastical elements to it, but it doesn't also just rely on that to sort of push the messaging and the point of the film. It does so very well with its performances and its script, which are very tight, and I really did love Amy Adams in this. Her performance is undeniable, and I'm very excited to see how award season will treat Amy Adams with this project. I'm very curious, but this is definitely one of those movies I would not miss. Cloud is a new Kurosawa film, and I was very excited for this one. It was top of the list for me for most anticipated projects. It also had a release at Fantastic Fest earlier this week, and this is a movie I watched at TIFF, and I watched it. It was late night. I think it was like 10 p.m. when I went to watch this. I had just watched The Apprentice, so I watched that very heavy film. Then I had to walk down a couple of blocks to the next theater to watch Cloud, and I barely made it in. It was packed, and it was 10 p.m. The film started, and I will tell you, this film is a movie that's just going to surprise you a lot, especially when you're watching it, because the first half feels like something, then when it gets to the halfway point, it turns into something else, and then its last act is a surprise, honestly. That's the best way I can put it. I don't want to give too much away, but it is definitely something interesting, and I would definitely watch this in the theater if I can, but no more on that. But Cloud was great. The next film is The Last Showgirl, which has Pamela Anderson, Billy Lord, you have Kiernan Shipka, Brennan Song, you also have in this Dave Bautista and Jamie Lee Curtis. Such a great cast all around. This is directed by Gia Coppola, and I was very excited for this film. I had been hearing rave reviews about Pamela Anderson's performance in particular, as well as Dave Bautista, and I sat down with this one and I was a little bit flabbergasted by it, because there's so many things that work in this film for me, and there's so many things that don't work at all. When it comes to the performances, they are undeniable. They are great. They are amazing. There's something in Pamela Anderson's performance that I can't put my finger on, that it just works so well, and it is such a heartbreaking performance to watch. When it comes to the directing, however, that's where I start to lose sort of my love for this film, because I think there's so many interesting choices that are made, and albeit they're artistic choices that are made, which I always say artists do what you need to do, but for me, it just didn't work. There's some framing issues for me. There's a way that these shots are handled, the pacing, and just the sort of like rhythm of the movie is lost for me, and I just couldn't get too into it. But I still think it's worth seeing just for the performances. There is a moment when Jamie Lee Curtis dances to a song that is just beautiful to see, and I really do think that it's worth watching at least once. But The Last Showgirl. The next film is going to be Anderson Paak's film K-Pops, which is their directorial debut, and basically it takes the whole premise of a musical show like American Idol of sorts, but for K-pop idols. And it's a comedy. It has a ton of music. It has a ton of musical guest stars in it. It feels like an early 2000s vibe type comedy, which can be good or bad depending on how you view those. But at the end of the day, it was very sweet. It had a lot of heart. It just wasn't my type of thing, though, however. But the audience I was with, erupting. They were laughing. They were loving and clapping. I still think it's great. It's worth watching with the family at least once, or just for a feel-good type movie, for sure. And the last film on my list, and certainly not the least or the one I hate the most or anything like that, because I told you I don't hate any of these movies, but I just had to make a list, was Mr. K, which I actually got the chance to watch at a screener. I didn't watch this at TIFF, but I did watch it as I was heading out to TIFF. And this is Crispin Glover starring in this very interesting film. If you're a fantasy lover and you love these movies that sort of like turn things inside out and add fantastical elements to them and make them into this grandiose thing. It almost felt like a play at times. This is the movie for you. It's full of musical moments. It's full of these creatures that are going to be interesting to see play out, and some very humorous lines here and there. But this was definitely one for the fantasy lovers for sure. But those were all the films I watched at TIFF, a total of 14. I really loved everything about it. I really loved everything about these films, my first experience at TIFF and all of that. I do want to make a vlog with all of the things that I caught there and talk a little bit more about the festivals. I know some people do want me to talk about going to festivals, how to handle festivals, going to screenings, things like that. That will be coming. I do want to make a series on that, so pretty soon I'll start working on that, talking about Sundance, South by Southwest, TIFF, as well as Fantastic Fest, which are the festivals that I do attend. So stay tuned for that video. Let me know if you have any questions about TIFF and things like that. I will try to address them in the videos. But as always, that's going to do it for me. Those are my top movies at TIFF and everything I watched. But anyways, for more on all the things you love, make sure you subscribe, notification bell. 35,000 subscribers is the goal, less than 3,000 to go. Super excited about that. I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.